my main burden in life is awareness. And I'm glad I'm talking to church. Mostly good thing. How many people are church people here? Let me see hands up. Oh, excellent. This is my kind of view. And I'm also grateful that there's a large number of people who have plenty of melanin. So we have a lot in common about what I want to talk to you about. Health awareness is not just about mental health. I don't focus on mental, but it's about physical health as well. About 6 months ago, I think it was BBC, there's a Nigerian woman who has begun a campaign for awareness of breast cancer.
Yeah.
Some of you may have seen that on the news. She was being interviewed and asked her, why have you started this campaign? She said, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I went to my church. So she was a church person. I hope not from this church. And she told her sister in the church, I've got breast cancer. I was told by the doctor I've got breast cancer. And the pastor and the sister said, shh, if you don't say it, you don't have it. Nigerians don't get breast cancer. That was a shock. And the truth is very many people, I know many people have died because they refuse to get treatment early. Deny. Or for a church to say that it doesn't exist. I also understand the complexities of trying to exercise faith. And that's not the basis of my talk today. We'll be here for 6 hours. It is true that God does heal. It is true that you can get healed miraculously. But it's also true that you will not thank the Lord. It's also true that God does honor natural methods of doing things. For example, He told the children of Israel, I will not drive out your enemies in one day. Who can remember why? Who can remember why? Yeah, you're right. He said because the wild animals will grow.
That's true.
And become many in the huge tracts of land that will be left empty. And it will be a problem to you. God, why is that a problem for you? You open the Red Sea, stop them from breathing. No, He wants to observe the natural laws. So I can go on for hours on this. Please take care of your physical health. Take care of your physical health. So I have a friend. I was in Scotland with my wife Elizabeth on holidays. She's in her 50s and she'd been diagnosed with hypertension many years ago. She never took her tablets. Her husband called me to speak to her. I spoke to her. She said, yes. You could tell she wasn't listening. I was in Scotland 2-3 years ago and her husband gave me a call. She had a heart attack, a massive one. Massive. She was lucky to be alive. So we drove down 8 hours from Scotland to go and see her. And one of her uncles, who's been in the UK for over 30 years, 30, he walked in and said to the lady, don't mind these doctors, this is spiritual. When she was discharged, she hardly took her tablets. She had heart failure. I think she's wise now. That this is a problem we face. That's physical health. I've mentioned cancer, I've mentioned hypertension, I've mentioned heart attacks. You don't take habits. You don't buy into that set of awareness. Mental health is worse because we don't understand it. Mental health is no different than physical health. Mental health is physical health. Mental health is the brain. The brain is a physical organ. If you have diabetes, it's your pancreas. It's a physical illness. If you have a heart attack, it's your heart, as the neck says. And if you have depression, you have psychosis, it's the brain's function. It's the brain's function. It's not something we eat. It's not something mysterious. It's physical health. And you all know that it's very, very common. 1 in 4, some say 1 in 3 people have mental health problems. Depression being one of the commonest. But what I want to speak about today very quickly in the last few minutes I have is about psychosis. Psychosis is a malfunction of the brain. God's for that time to talk to you. Where the brain capability of determining what is real becomes impaired. Your brain, from when you're a baby, has to learn what is real. Remember, your brain has never seen light. Your brain has never heard sound. Your brain has never seen anything. You think you're seeing me? You're trusting your brain for that. Electrical signals have come to your brain, and your brain is saying there's this bald-headed man standing in front of you, tell you all kinds of things. What if your brain gives you the information when there's nobody there? Easy. We had a pastor who was admitted to one of our hospitals. For the first time, he went on a very long fast. He's fasted that time before, he's a Nigerian pastor. But this time we went on a dry fast. And he was going to do a 30-day fast. By the 14th or 15th day, he began to enter into the spirit realm. He started telling his wife and his elders that he started to see divine beings, angels talking to him. There's one in the corner there, there's one there. And where? I'm right there. It's not a long story short. He had a major psychotic breakdown. And we had to admit him to hospital for weeks and weeks on end and treat him with antipsychotic medication. Why? Because by not eating, he's not used to fasting that long, and not drinking, the body doesn't do more than 3 days without water. After that, it starts to self-destruct. He had caused abnormalities in his electrolyte balances. He had dehydrated his brain, and the brain began to malfunction. And the brain lost the ability to know what's real, what's not real. He was hearing voices, he was seeing things, he was getting very irritable and angry. That's how fragile our brains are. I saw a Nigerian lady in my clinic once. She was in her 50s. She came with her husband. And she said to me, my husband thinks I've got mental illness. I don't have mental illness. So what's the problem? Our neighbors are always saying bad things about me. I can hear them, but my husband doesn't hear them because he's citing them. I explored this very, very carefully, and I fully believe it was a brain playing tricks on that. It was psychosis. I said, Madam, I think this is your brain playing tricks on that. I didn't say mental illness because that carries too much taboo. Your brain playing tricks on you. How about taking a tablet that might stop it? Doctor. Oh, this is not, you don't understand. You just do what your husband wants you to do. I said, Madam, let's have a bet. Take my tablets for 6 weeks. I'll see you in 6 weeks' time. If your problems don't go away, I'll put my hands up and I'll give you 10 pounds. I said, but if they go away, you give me 10 pounds. And she was so confident, she said yes. So I wrote a prescription. 6 weeks' time, she came to the clinic with her husband, and there was this, I'm used to it in her face. She sat down and I said, what happened? She said, Doctor, within 2 days, we're all gone. I'm fine. And then she wanted to understand, how did this happen? And let's talk some along this line about mental health and the brain. But that's the problem. And there are many of us who have, Dr. Adebayo, family members Oh, let me tell you one more story, because stories are very good. And if you want to ask questions, please do, because I'm really relying on that. Okay. I have a friend, it's a close friend of mine, he's a twin, but they're not identical. And he said to me about 5 years ago, oh, do you have a twin? I said, yes, she told me about him. Where is he? Oh, he's back home in Nigeria. What's he doing? Oh, he's mad. So he's in the village running around the place, half naked. I said, wow. I said, send him a letter. Tell the family to buy him this medication and that medication, just two, and let's see what happens. He's fully clothed, and he's got a job in Port Harcourt. Without that awareness, he would have died on the streets naked. And I can bet you most of the people you see running around what we call mad in Nigeria. You treat them, they'll be fine. Last story. I was at work one day and one of the Nigerian ladies came to work. One of the ladies at work came to me and said, I've got a problem. I said, what's the problem? She said, I have an aunt. She's been taken to the village, tied to a tree somewhere by this traditional doctor, and they're trying to get rid of the spirits inside her. But I've heard news that she died. So I said, I arranged for transport to bring her to Lagos. I arranged for her to give me this medication. 6 months she was running a shop, her own shop in Lagos. From being naked with sores and being whipped. I'm not saying they're no spirit, they're Christian. But there's a vast difference between spiritual possession of Christian and mental illness. Vast. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you appreciate that. It really is a big difference. And I'll give you one example. How many people have that? I'm good Lord. And I'll give you one example. Yeah, no, but I'll give you one example. This occurred when I was lecturer for the radio. I was a medical student, I was in BAE, a different department, emergency department. And they brought in, it was a man, about 30s, 40s. It took about 20 people to drag him in. He was speaking 3 or 4 languages at the same time. Not one after the other. At the same time. You hear English, you hear that. So I was a Christian then, so I told the registrar, I said, this is not the place for him. Oh! And put him in the bed, give him Lacactil. Lacactil is a powerful sedative. 400 milligrams, fed a horse. Give him Lacactil, 300. Give him Lacactil, nothing happened. 600, 700, 800, 1,000. So he gave up, and we left because of that. We were coming in and car accidents and all that. Then we had a scream from one of the nurses, and we all ran there. They had tied this man to a metal frame bed. So he was completely trying to get sat up and bent the entire frame with him. So my registrar thought, yes, you can think you're right. This is not. It's different. It's very different. Last example, and I stop. Again, I was a medical student, and we were at the mental facility in America. Those of you who know it, it's called Arrow. We have an outpatient place, and they brought in this man. From the moment he came in, it was clear that this wasn't mental illness. What made it clear was, from my perspective, his eyes, there was a degree of intelligence that was totally unnatural. Then he sat in front of the psychiatrist, and I always tapping my SPR. I said, I don't think this is mental health. So the guy looked at the doctor and said, how's your wife? And called her by name. Not her full name. And he named all his children. Told him everything he'd done that morning. Because then he knew he was confronting a highly intelligent being. The doctor to pay him would have paid. They just told them to take the patient out. The difference is clear. I've been in mental health for over 20 years. I've treated thousands of sick people. Nobody comes near this. Nobody. So in closing, and let's put questions and answers later, there's so much. If you know somebody, here in the UK, who you think might be suffering, contact the GP. Please. Contact the GP. Many people often tell me, what do I do? It's really very simple. Contact the patient's GP. And on that note, as a light on for restore to eyes, I will stop.
One of the best ways to learn a lesson is actually story. Somebody actually told me once, one of my mentors told me once, he said, when you want to preach a powerful message, always put a story in there. Because you know what, people do not forget stories. If I forget your name, but a story you've told would ring at the back of the head. And one of the key stories for us here, for me, is a contract that Dr. Adebayo has given. And that's the fact that there is mental illness, and there is the fact that we recognize that we're Christians, and there's spirit as well. So there's a malfunctioning of the brain, but however, there's something that can cause the malfunctioning of the brain. And that is where, for us as Christians, we need to be able to discern and know what is going on.
Okay. Sorry. Many people know that the Lord said in the Old Testament, if Israel, I think it's in Deuteronomy 28:29, when you say, I will do this and that and that and that and that, and he said, you will see some awful things, your mind will break, you will develop mental illness.
That's true. That's the scripture. Very true. Very true. So what we're here talking about today is a reality. And the reason why this is coming into the church is because we know what Jesus Christ said. He said, in the last days, perilous times shall arise. Men's hearts will give way. The truth is men's heart and women's heart are giving way. The pressure is so intense out there that for us as Christians, it's not the church, it's not the world that should be teaching us. We should be teaching the church. And all of these principles are in the Bible. But unfortunately, a lot of us, we run into the Bible with the concept that the Bible is for our spirits and not for our mind. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians don't even recognize that we're spirit, soul, and body. So we kind of concentrate on our body and our spirit, and we don't know what our mind is. So if I ask someone, what's the state of your mind at the moment, a lot of us will probably not be able to answer. So you can know your spiritual state, you know whether you are firing up spiritually, whether you're interceding, you know whether you're backsliding. If your leg hurts you, know whether your leg is hurting you or not. But if your mind is impaired, how do you know? And that's why we're organizing this. This is one in many series that we're going to be talking about. It's a lot of topics to cover. But I'm going to bring on, I'm going to be on the pulpit. I'm going to bring to the rostrum or to the lecture now, Dr. Rachel Rose. She's going to tell you about herself. So she's been actively working with Ruach Church. One of the things we recognize is that the church needs to put a framework in place. The same way we have safeguarding policies, by now every church should have a safeguarding policy around young people. Once you work with young people, it is by law. You must have a safeguarding policy in there. The same thing we're trying to push for, that with each church there must be a mental health framework, where people, you will have mental health champions within each church who would know how to respond at first instance. We can never ever acquire the expertise of Dr. Adebayo or Dr. Kampana is going to be coming in later. They spent years in the medical school acquiring those skills. We can never. But however, I'm going to be talking later about mental health first aid, the training and what that does, how you can respond at first instance. But Dr. Rachel Rose, she's a PhD in psychology, She's working very actively with some churches. So she's going to be telling you about the mental health framework that we're actually pushing for that churches should have. The truth is, 2 weeks ago, I observed, I was there, a young girl, a young Christian girl, on fire for Christ, sectioned. Very active in church, she was sectioned. Why? There were signs that actually displayed in the church that people would have thought it's okay. These are things we sweep under the carpet a lot of time. I observe, one of the things I love to do is I love to observe people. And maybe because I've been there before, I know what those signs are. When people start to show those early signs, I know what they are. And we're supposed to be working with people so that they don't cross over. There is a spectrum. Mental illness or mental health is a spectrum. So you can start from the good to the medium to the very high. All of these that we're talking about today is to say, you know what, let's stop it at the low level. When the anxiety comes and you don't know how to manage it, when the insomnia, ability for you not to sleep very well, when that happens, how do you manage it? These are things we're going to talk about later. Can we put our hands together as I call on Dr. Rachel Burrell? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here, and thank you to Dein and Pastor and co-pastor for being here. It's an absolute pleasure, a wonderful, beautiful church. Today, if we could start with the slides, they're going to help me with what we're doing today. You can go to the next slides. Lad, I wonder if you could give me a 5-minute, 15-minute, when I get to 15 minutes, just give me so I only have 5 minutes left. I'm briefly going to talk to you today about the Bible and mental health. I'm just going to touch on my research before I talk about a framework, a supportive framework that I think we can all adopt in our churches and how we can move forward with that. For the sake of time, I will only highlight the things on each slide that I think are the key points, and of course during the question and answer section we can go into more detail. So I'm going to move on. So I don't have a clicker, so we're just going to have to work with our technicians at the top. So the first scripture, 1 Thessalonians 5:23, I pray God your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved. And that's the scripture when it talks about whole. I'm looking at the Greek according to Strong's, is talking about being complete in every part, perfectly sound and entire, the whole of you. And then the word spirit is pneuma, it means breath, soul, vital principle. And the most important thing I want to stress on is mental disposition. When we're talking about spirit, we're also talking about your mind. Soul there in that scripture means psyche, breath, spirit, heart, life, and mind. Body means the whole body being sound, and that word preserve means to guard from loss or injury properly by keeping an eye upon, watch to keep. And essentially what the scripture is saying, that we each have an individual responsibility to ensure that we look after the whole of us. And that actually we can't separate soul from spirit. When we talk about heart, soul, spirit, we are talking about the same thing, and mind comes into that. So when we're talking about your heart, we're talking about your mind, your soul, your spirit, it is your mind. And we need to keep an eye on it. This is what the word preserve means. Keep an eye, a watchful eye, to make sure you're looking after it and that it is perfectly sound. 3 John 1 verse 2 says, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health. And the word health means to be sound, whole, safe and sound, healthy, even as your soul prospers. The Amplified version is, beloved, I pray that you may prosper and in every way, and that your body may keep well, even as I know your soul keeps well and prospers. Here we are. I was just thrilled when I walked into this sanctuary, because above me is freedom to prosper. I don't think that's a coincidence. Here we are talking about the scripture that says he wants us to prosper in health. The word prosper in terms of the Greek from Strong's means to help on the road, to succeed in reaching. And so what we're doing is we're on the road of life, the journey of life, and the Lord wants us to succeed in being healthy. The whole of us. And so moving on, this is what Nadia was, this is just a visual expression or representation of mental health. When we're talking about mental health, it can be summarized, I think, in these two questions. How are you feeling and how are you coping? Okay, if mental health, that term is a little bit too much for you. We're just asking, how are you feeling and how are you coping? And if we look at the green to the red, green is when you're feeling good and you're coping well, and red is, well, you're not feeling so good and you're not coping so well. And the third question I'd like to ask today is, where are you on that spectrum today? How are you coping and how are you feeling? And as I was saying, we need to check in with ourselves and check in with ourselves regularly. How am I feeling? How am I doing? How am I coping with life situations? So my research that I completed last year looked at the Black majority church and exploring the impact of faith and the faith community on mental health and well-being. And the aims of the study was to explore the interpretation of problems. How do we, as our doctor was saying, sometimes we say that problems aren't problems, that there are no problems. Especially as a child of God, there are no problems. It's God fixes and God will make a way, and so there are no problems. So the interpretation of problems, how do we interpret a problem? Coping strategies, help-seeking behavior, and we were looking at all of this from a Black Christian perspective and those who were attending the Black majority church. And we were also in the study examining how the Black majority church responds to congregants experiencing mental health difficulties. In summary, the findings of the study showed that the Black Christian or Black people, generally speaking, encounter many barriers when they're seeking help inside the church and external to the church. So I just want to touch on a few of these which have been sort of mentioned already. So in terms of within the church, there was a sense that there was a lack of confidentiality, that people would just talk your business even if you went and spoke to them in private. There was a lack of skill, expertise in mental health within the church in general. Generally, people who were saying they are helpers were not qualified. People tended to spiritualize and demonize natural problems. We've talked about medical problems, I should say. Leaders were sometimes unavailable or inaccessible. Church, if you had a mental health problem, was unfriendly and unwelcoming. People felt they were not being listened to, and there was a sense of ignorance in the church that people didn't want to learn. There was just one way, you pray about it, and that was it. Back in the day when I said, okay, I want to do something mental health in my church. My church was an apostolic church. We wore the hats, and we were going to Ascot every Sunday. That kind of church. We took holiness seriously. And I said to the bishop, I want to set up a counselling service in the church. And he said, well, why do we need a counselling service when we can pray? That was the end of that discussion. 20 years later, they are now open to mental health, praise the Lord. The Lord is changing, He's changing things. And so, the thing I want to talk about in terms of barriers external to the church were that generally people were suspicious of statutory services, mainly due to negative experiences, perceptions of the services, because some people have had some negative experiences, mainly due to the emphasis on medication. Not sure about the medication and the side effects. Also that people tended to be pathologized because they expressed their faith. So within certain psychiatric arenas, if you started to say, I love the Lord and God spoke to me, they said, that sounds like delusions, and give them more medication, up the medication. Then there's a lack of understanding and cultural sensitivity that people identify. People were also felt they were unable to speak freely about faith within therapy. So if you went for therapy, mainstream therapy, and you mentioned, emails being praying to God, some therapists would take issue with that because how can you believe something you can't see? That, I believe, is delusional. They would send you to your GP. And so people felt they were not being listened to. and within statutory service there was a sense of arrogance that, they felt they knew everything and they weren't open to any kinds of negotiation. Other barriers included lack of understanding of what counselling is and isn't, lack of accessibility and availability of counselling, cultural differences, stigma, lack of faith if you relied on doctors or you took medication. And so now going on to the framework. And a framework is just a supporting structure that allows us to do what we need to do. And I believe there are 3 levels of attention that we need to take account of today. And it starts firstly with the personal. I must look in the mirror and I must ask myself some questions about my health and well-being. It has to start with me. Am I healthy? Not just in body, but in my mind. And if I'm not, what do I need to do about it? And then when we start to live healthy, we start to impact people in our homes. We start to impact our friends. We start to think about what we eat, when we eat it, what we do, our behaviours, our health behaviours. We start to make different choices. The second level of attention, I believe, is in the pulpit and in the pews. Our leaders are so powerful. They're so powerful in that they are so influential. If a pastor says, I don't believe in medication, and I don't believe in mental health, the congregation will say, we don't believe in it either. But if the pastor says, now come on, saints, let's start looking after our mental health, let's make sure we rest, let's talk about our feelings, let me tell you about my story. Once the pastor starts to do that, it releases the congregation to do the same. But also, as our doctor mentioned, there is a spate of pastors who are killing themselves. There was a spate in North Carolina and recently in the UK where pastors are crumbling and bending and breaking under the pressure of ministry. And so I think it's also important as part of this framework that we talk about pastoral care. How do we look after our leaders? Yeah, and so we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then the other level is partnerships, partnering with the community and helping professions and sharing our expertise. And I say sharing because the church has expertise. No, you never heard me. The church has expertise. Oh yes. And we want to share that and be respected for that. And so we will talk about that as we go along in just a moment. 3 levels of action. First of all, we have to care. There has to be a level of concern. After today, I don't want at the end for you to say, oh, that was really good, I really enjoyed your talk. I want some action. What are we going to do next? And we do that together. So we acknowledge the problem and we take responsibility for trying to address it. There needs to be a level of commitment, which is a dedication to a cause and a pledge. I'd like us to make a pledge today that we are going to join together to address these issues. And then, of course, the other level is change. Something in our house needs to change. Something in our church community, many things in our church community needs to change. But one thing I would want to say is that we need to demystify and normalize mental health. Make it normal for us to talk about my mental health in the church, and that we share knowledge and resources between our churches. And so my idea of a framework would look like that we look inward. Now, first of all, some of us don't realize that within our churches we have professionals. Professionals who do the job, who work with mental health and work in therapy. They do it day in, day out, and they're not being used. And so I think we need to take a look inward and start to utilize the skills and expertise that are within our churches and to share them across our churches. Take the responsibility to heal ourselves. We've already said that. Work together as a network. We need specific skills to assess and respond appropriately to signs of mental health distress and through different kinds of training and courses. We need to create links and referral pathways with external services. Mental health first aid courses. Laddie's going to speak about that. And centres of excellence and professionalism. You know, I was talking to somebody in public health, and I said, we want to set up a counselling service within our church. Oh, no, we can't do that. No, because, there are all sorts of issues around supervision and, confidentiality and I said, well, all my team were qualified professionals, and we are accredited. And there is a sense that if the church wants to provide services, that somehow the quality is not going to be that great. And so part of the framework has to be about changing that perception, where we become centers of excellence and professionalism. Thank you. So after finishing my doctorate, I set about responding to some of these barriers. Is that 2 minutes? Help me, Jesus. Did the church say fine? Did the church hear you say fine? No, that's only 2 minutes. Help me, Lord. That's unkind. God, praise the Lord. Thank you for that. 5 minutes to 2 minutes, wouldn't it? Okay. So I developed this resource called Social Therapy. It's at the back. Come and talk to me afterwards. And it's based on 2 Greek words in the Bible: to heal or to save oneself, restoring your spirit, your soul, your body. It's to make whole. It's to relieve, to treat, to cure. And that word therapy also means to worship. And I just want you to know that when we are worshiping God on a Sunday and during the week, that in itself is a healing process. I need you to know that as you're worshiping, you are healing yourself. It is a form of therapy. It's a form of release. And so this resource that I developed, Social Therapy, is a resource for promoting, improving, and maintaining mental health in the church. Not just my church, the body of Christ. It's through information, education, and a therapy referral system. We are able to create bespoke training packages. So if you want us to create some training on mental health awareness or self-esteem for young people, we can do that for you. We also, I have produced a couple of manuals, training manuals. One is mental health awareness for churches, the other one is counselling skills for pastors, and the aim is to equip the church and to equip the pastors to respond appropriately to people with mental health difficulties. Now, I don't want to say difficulties because we all have mental health, don't we? And sometimes we're just not feeling great. And sometimes we just need somebody to talk to, and we want that person to respond to us appropriately. And so the manuals will be available at the back. I'm creating a church-based therapy forum. So those churches who have counselling services attached to them, or counsellors who work within the church, we are joining together to form a network. So some people, when they come, they want therapy, they don't want to have therapy with the person that they see on Sunday. They would prefer to see somebody who was a Christian, but not in their church. And so what we're trying to do is to create this network where I can refer you to South London if you want to go to South, or refer you to East London if you want to go to East. And so that already is in motion, so if anybody will really come and talk to me to join that forum. I've also created a therapist directory, where if you're looking for a therapist who's particularly a Christian, because some people just want to talk to a Christian because they are sensitive to our faith, then I've created a directory that you can access, and the details will be at the back as well. And this is a particular resource for churches and pastors, so if you want to refer out, you can do that. Like Lade, I want to encourage champions within our churches, mental health champions, to training, and so we're going to talk about that later. But with regard to pastoral support, the thing I'd like to do is to offer clinical supervision to pastors. So sometimes pastors hear some very grueling and upsetting things with nowhere to take it. And so we want to create a space for pastors to talk and share in a confidential way to help manage not just the expectations that the church has on them, but also some of the material that they're hearing. I'm a consultant to churches who want to set up counselling services within their church. And I also believe that every church has the opportunity to become a health hub, where we have all sorts of information on well-being and health, whether that's physical health or mental health. And we have health checks, because we have doctors in here that can do little blood pressure check your weights, just little things, and then signpost you to your doctor if things flag up. So I think we can be centres of knowledge and resource. I'm also working with the government officials to See if we can have a government incentive for churches to accommodate training in their churches, to embrace mental health awareness training. And I'm working with Sadiq Khan as we speak. There are lots and lots of examples of how this is, how churches are working well within their communities. We don't have time to talk about that now. But the last thing I want to say is, in the next slide, which is Luke 4, verse 23. And this is Jesus speaking, and all he says is, physician, heal thyself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rachel Rose. I wish we had time. I think we need to do this again. Don't you think so? I think we need to do this again because there's just so much information and we're kind of like breezing through. Hearing Dr. Adebayo, I felt like, we should listen to him for 1 hour. There's just so much information, so much knowledge, but I'm so conscious of time because I know a lot of people have so much activities today. But however, we still need to get the crux of the message out. And that is one, we all have mental health. Can we all say it together? We all have mental health. We all have mental health. Remember what I said, your voice projects who you are. So can we say it properly? We all have mental health. That's it. Remember I said when we started that the first therapy, it was about your voice. It is one key thing that a lot of us sometimes just overlook. We think it's okay. Your voice dictates a lot about how you feel on the inside. Sometimes how you feel on the inside dictates what your voice is, but you know what, you can control your voice. Even when you don't feel too good on the inside, make sure you project your voice well. Even when you don't feel too good on the inside, make sure you put your voice at the top notch. So we talked about therapies. We've listened to Dr. Adebayo, the consultant, as a clinician. We've listened to Dr. Rachel Rose. We have a set of young people. I actually was in their church last year, and I sat down and I watched the drama, and I'm like, you know what? This is a drama. It's actually a drama around mental health. This is a drama that should go, we will take them around for as much as we have the opportunity. There's some salient message that we need to pick as we watch them. So they're going to be active for the next 15 minutes. Less than 15. 15, 20. I'm so conscious of time, not because it started late, but however, can we put our hands together as we breathe in through? Please show me how that's teaching. Please let's continue to practice.
Thanks.
It's a Thursday afternoon after school, and a group of girls are chilling at home looking at pictures of boys.
Yo, look at Michael. He's so dead.
Oh my
God, he's looking good. Stephanie, I thought you didn't like him.
Okay, you called me out. I do like him. He looks so good. I always stare at him in chemistry, but I don't know if he likes him back.
Well, you know he only goes for lesbian girls in the night. Look at that play. He can't see you with the lights are off. He can barely notice you with the lights are on.
Look at me. Then don't take it to heart. But being actually, look at all his exes. They're all like him.
Being dark is alright, but you know how guys are just want light girls.
I mean, look at Beyonce. She's so dark. Look at her now.
Really? Is that her?
That's her now.
That's a transformation.
Apparently, she used this cream and dipped it one.
Not really sure about that. Isn't it dangerous? And besides, my mum will notify me bleach.
No, don't think of it as bleaching. Think of it as nice without the extra face. You look pale.
I don't think he wants to go that far though. Plus, you have to do something about your weight.
Yeah.
Your Michael X is all pen, nice hair, big, you know. I don't think Michael likes girls that have shaped like footies.
I mean, yeah, you do need to work your way. I mean, you want to look at them if the vitamins.
You know my sister? Stephanie. Yeah, that girl. She used to look like big mama before. Every time she go into the bus, people would just get off her because she was pregnant. My sister, pregnant. Anyways, she did this diet plan called Swim, where you basically take 400 calories a day and use some supplement plus weight. Yeah, do supplements.
Okay. Wait, where did you get it from?
AliExpress, don't worry if they say it, and you lose weight very fast. My sister was once like 22, so it's like 16 in 3 months.
3 months!
Wow.
Wait, hold up. I thought you said she had surgery in Dubai.
Don't just get rid of excess skin. Don't worry. My mama used to do fast and breakfast, so only one man, not you, one, to look in her direction. After she's been on this diet plan, my sister found her Prince Charming and got married next year.
Next year? Wow. I'll think about it, but I'm still not sure.
Listen, Debbie, this is your only chance of mind for the party next month. Just think about it, yeah?
Bye. Okay. I feel so worthless. All these negative comments from my friends is really getting me low. All the comment about my weight, about my skin color, it's just building up and it's getting too much. I can't handle it anymore. Maybe I should just take the pill, but I don't want to. But if I take it, maybe they'll stop commenting about me and just accept me for who I am.
The next month at the party.
Let's just go, man. Bring the man over here with me. Let's take some peace now. I want to get the money to split it out.
She didn't pick, I don't know what she is. I see you. Okay. I like to know the me first.
No, it's not to be.
Yeah.
I feel so sick. Deborah, what's wrong with you? You haven't eaten the food I prepared for you. What's going on? I feel so sick. Oh, calm down, Deborah. You're in big trouble. We'll deal with that later. What's going on? Are you pregnant? I've been noticing you've been losing a lot of weight lately, but this vomiting is on another level. What's going on? I've been meaning to tell you, but my friend said I should take these supplement pills which help me to lose weight. I just wanted to look good for the party tonight, but I've just had such bad bellyache and I've been throwing up. I just, wanted to lose weight. I look so good tonight, but I guess that's not going to happen. Who told you you're not good enough? When you've been fearfully and wonderfully made by God Himself. Who are you to change what God has already deemed perfect? You're beautiful just the way you are, so don't let any boy or girl tell you otherwise. You're my black beauty. So what if you're better than other people? I can tell that the lives of your friends have affected your mind deeply. And I don't know whether these pills have caused any significant damage to you. I'm so sorry for not noticing. I thought your quietness was just another trait of being a teenager. Please forgive me. Come, let me take you to A&E. It's the next day, and Debbie and her mum have returned from A&E. Thank you for taking me to the doctor's, Mum. I feel so much better. I didn't know that all of these things can be changed if I just talk to somebody. It was really that easy. So, what are we having for dinner? Okay. Well, I was just thinking, while I was there, I just wanted to change who I was so the negative comment from my friends would stop.
Your friends? I think you managed to get some new ones. Anyone who doesn't accept people the way you are doesn't deserve to be called your friend. I think parents should be more aware of what their young ones are going through. I feel that these are the kind of things that make young people want to take their own lives. I just thank God you didn't suffer from any long-lasting damage. I will need to take some time of work to take you to your first counseling session. But first, let me make your favorite dish. Banana mash. Come in.
Oh, hello, Sister Nancy.
Good afternoon, ma.
Hello, my daughter. How are you? So I didn't see you in church yesterday, and I'm so worried. I was trying to call your phone. You didn't pick up. What happened?
I had to take Debbie to the hospital.
Oh, what happened?
She's been suffering from some mental health.
Mental? What did you say? Mental as if she's mad.
No, it's very common around teenagers.
Common among what? Are you being serious? This is demon, and the witches and the wizards from your feeling are pursuing you. You need to reject it. On your knees right now. Get on your knees. You need to pray and bind every demon. Can you join me in prayer? Oh my God. In the mighty name of Jesus, you bind them from the mental illness upon your life. It is well with you. It is well with you. It is well. Are you feeling better now? Actually, no. The power of God can drive every single demon and every witch and everything that you can driven out. No canceling. I can sort it out by the power of God. Let me do what I need to do. The mighty name of Jesus. This is so good. Well, no more demon, no more demon.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
You know what? I'll leave you. You can go to your counseling and do whatever you want to do. I'm telling you, God can sort this problem out by himself. I'll leave you people. I'm going to drive past you. Don't you like it? Bye.
That was very intense.
I hope you understood that it's just more than prayer.
Come in. Oh, hey.
Auntie, good afternoon.
So, Debbie, where were you? You missed everything. Like, literally,
Everything, girl.
It was so nice. Like, literally, everyone's dancing, having fun, everyone's looking nice. Everybody was there.
Well, thanks for asking. I was in the hospital because of the supplement pills you gave me. Remember when I called you after school to ask for supplement pills? Well, it had this effect. You told me your sister took it, but you never told me about the symptoms I can have after that. And while I was there, I got to thinking that you guys are not my friends, because friends just accept me for who I am. And my mom was telling me that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and I shouldn't have to change to reach your standard.
Excuse
So
me.
I don't think we can be friends anymore.
We were just trying to help you.
Yeah, it's not our fault, your fault.
Literally, I'm not asking too dark.
Trust me. No manners.
You guys just don't get it. You should just accept me for who I am. Whether I'm fat, whether I'm light, whether I'm dark. I should just be able to be me around you. And I don't think you're welcome in my house anymore.
Yeah, I think that's
It's too dark. Thank you.
I did. Words are powerful. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 tells us something very, very clearly. Guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life. And how do we get the things in our hearts? From all the 5 physical senses that we have. So it is what we hear, what we see, what we taste, what we feel. And then what's the last one? The 5 senses. Taste, see, touch. Touch. So all those five senses actually will determine who we are. But what is most important, and which for me is quite key, the message it just said to us, is that a lot of mental illnesses that we see in adults actually develop as children. And most of the time it is not dealt with. And then it carries over into adulthood. So I know that this week I shared a personal experience. My personal experience was when my mother died when I was 12. There was a trauma that was inflicted in my mind. I had a quick session with Dr. Adebayo, I think about 3 weeks ago. There were some key things he told me. I just kept scribbling down. This man is a sage. He has a wealth of knowledge. I kept scribbling down. He actually told me that the brain is like plastic. It grows, it conditions, and it responds itself to the things we go through in life. So a lot of the time when you have a sudden change in your lifestyle, a change of job, a change in relationship, something happens, your brain changes. And oftentimes you don't respond appropriately to the change in the brain. So I had a trauma when I lost my mom. I won't say exactly due to domestic violence, but I think it's okay for me to share with you. The night before, she actually died during childbirth. The night before she went into the hospital, I witnessed an exchange between herself and my dad. So we're 6 girls. And you know the culture where we come from. When you have girls, you have not yet had a child. So we have the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, 6 girls. So there was immense pressure on my mom that she actually had 12 pregnancies, or 13 pregnancies in all. And the last one, she died. And I witnessed an exchange between my dad and my mom when my dad had called my mom names. I actually called her a witch and said, oh, it's because you're a witch. You want to pass your witchcraft. That's why you've intentionally been having girls. And that's what stuck in my brain. It was not dealt with. And one of the things I recognize is that a lot of us actually use religion. Intentionally, I use the word religion as a cover-up. So I got born again at a very young age. Because I was looking for reprieve. I was looking for somewhere where I could get solace. It wasn't a real solace because I wanted salvation. Of course, salvation for my spirit. But my soul was there seeking for proper salvation, and I did not get. And that's why we're talking about that it needs to be spoken about in the church. That your mind is principle. And one thing Christ did was to recognize the tripartite being of the human nature. We are spirit essentially, we have a mind, and we live in a body. You cannot separate those 3 things. When Jesus Christ came, he came for the totality of man. It wasn't just for our spirit, it came also for our mind. It came also for the body. And that's why when he had over 5,000 men that had been following him for days when they were hungry, he didn't say, go back, you guys are hungry, you can go away. No, he fed their body. When Lazarus died, the Bible says he wept. He recognized the fact that we have emotions. And for a long time, most of us as Christians, we hide under Christianity. Of course, Dr. Adebayo already said it earlier, we do not take away the fact that there is healing. Jesus Christ heals. But within that healing, there's a direct healing and there's indirect healing that he does. And that's why when he heals, it wasn't everyone he said, be healed, go away. There was one he spat on the floor and he mixed it with mud and he rubbed it on the eyes. There was the one he sent his word and the word healed even without him being physically there. There are different types of ways God heals. When your mind is impaired, don't hide it. Don't shroud it. Low self-esteem starts at a very young age. And for a lot of us, we carry it on into old age. It starts at a very young age when we don't positively affirm our children. And that's why I love that drama. We don't positively affirm our children. There's so much for us to do. We can't go through all of it today. But I'm grateful that you sat down so far. We're going to have a quick break now. Quick toilet break. Just 5 minutes. So if you want to go to the toilet, please go to the toilet quickly and then we'll come back. When we come back, we'll continue. Can you give yourselves a round of applause, please? Thank you so much. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back. So we'll come back at 12:30. 12:30 we'll come back. We have open mic sessions where we can ask questions. That is really, really key. We have people in house to answer your questions. Thank you.